Derek, thank you very much indeed for giving us, I think, a sort of lead into our discussion next, that we in the tourism industry, I consider myself part of you now, of course, need to be leading the way, not just because you have a crucial mouthpiece here, but also it's a matter of survival for the industry, and I think that's a message very well taken, Derek, so thank you. So I'd like now to introduce to the stage Tanya Beckett, who is Professor of Sustainable Tourism at Griffith University, Helen Karen from TUI Group Purchasing, the director there, and Inge Hugeberes, who is Global Senior Vice President, Responsible Business, Safety and Security at Radisson Hotel Group. Thank you very much indeed. Please welcome. Do you want to sit? Oh, it doesn't matter where you sit, really, does it?
Sit there.
I think some of the messages there that we were hearing, as I've said to you, were very powerful indeed. What I want to ask all of you first is, where is the imperative, in your view, coming from for responsible travel? Would you say it is because there is a matter of survival, because the consumer demands it, because the government is demanding it, or because you feel that you need to attach a morality, I suppose, to the brand? Where do you think it's coming from?
Yeah, great question. I think we've moved beyond the stage of just morality, because we have an absolutely pressing situation. I mean, plastic was mentioned, climate change.
Yes.
We really don't have much time left, and many of you would have seen the recent report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So the time is ticking. So I think it's an urgency, and I actually think, especially in the last probably year or so, because of multiple crises, and Cape Town was mentioned, over-tourism in some ways as well has shown that we have limits to capacity. So people have become much more aware. I think there's now more pressure from the public as well to say we got to address this.
So, Suzanne, it's really coming from all sides. Helen, at TUI, what is the thinking there?
Well, over the last 18 months to 2 years, we've seen a significant shift in consumer sentiment.
Can you hear us all, by the way? Is anybody at the back having troubles? I've got a thumb up. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So we're seeing a significant shift in consumer sentiment, and it's interesting that you touched on earlier, in particular from younger people, millennials, and also from the female audience. They're telling us that they expect tour operators to take this matter seriously. 53% of customers in a recent survey told us that they had a much better image of a tour operator if they had a sustainability strategy. And also we saw that 57% of customers are more likely to select a tour operator to travel with if they took care of the environment. So for us, this is what our customers are telling us that they want. That's why it's really important.
Okay, and you're taking some very interesting initiatives, I know, so we'll come back to that. Inge, what about you? At Radisson, where do you think the pressure is coming from? Because I know from your point of view, some of the initiatives you take are actually quite complicated to explain to consumers, right? So in a way, it's kind of behind the scenes. You don't always get credit for what you're doing with the consumer.
Well,
or not immediate credit, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's coming from both ways, as we have heard. I think it's an absolute necessity to do something about climate change and water scarcity and issues like plastic. So we feel it's an absolute necessity. We want to align as a company with the targets of COP21 on climate change, but it's also something we are seeing from our consumers, as was said before, and I'm very glad to see that consumer movement, because today we see that consumers can create that pressure and they can vote with their wallets, and that is what they are doing. It's also something where we as a company want to do the right thing. With origins in the Nordics, Radisson Hotel Group has had an environmental policy for over 25 years. So we've been doing the right thing, or trying to do the right thing, for a very long time, even when we do not get recognition, and even when it is something that happens behind the scenes on a more technical level. So I'm very glad to see both things coming together, the pressure, the necessity, and the pressure from consumers.
Helen, if I may come back to you, I just want to go through very specifically a few of the initiatives to give an idea to the audience of how the group is thinking on this.
Okay, so the aim at TUI really is to drive change at scale. We take 20 million customers on holiday every year, so we need to do this at scale.
20 million?
20 million. So in this year, over 8 million of our customers will have stayed in one of our hotels that has a sustainability accreditation by the Global Sustainability Tourism Council. So, you know, we are making a difference, and those customers are staying in hotels where it's proven they are reducing their carbon efficiency, they are better managing their waste.
Increasing their carbon efficiency.
Increasing their carbon efficiency, yeah, decreasing their their waste, and they are decreasing the amount of water that they're using. So
Right,
that is
just a
making
few
us-
initiatives to explain how you go about doing that.
So we're asking them to look at initiatives of how they recycle. So we talked about earlier about customers not recycling on holiday. That's not our experience, because in our hotels with this accreditation, they are all expecting our holiday makers to recycle. If it's single-use plastics, if it's they're expecting them to recycle all kinds of waste. But we're also taking initiatives to eliminate single-use plastics as well. So we're drawing straws in our hotels. We've recently announced that on our cruise ships. We're looking at how between now and 2020 we can eliminate as much single-use plastic as possible. So there's a lot going on in our hotels, but then also in our airline, we aim to operate the most efficient, carbon efficient airlines. We are recognised as the most carbon efficient airlines in Europe, and that is our aim to continue to do that. So, it's touching all parts of our business, and it's ingrained into TUI's DNA. It is now about, this is just the way we do business.
Okay, so just to be clear, I suppose listening to this, one might suspect that really it's tinkering at the edges, but you're able to measure the impact of this, are you?
Yeah, we certainly are, and we communicate the impact that we're having in our annual report every year. We also have objectives for our people to reduce their carbon impact as well. So as an example, recently in our shops, we have 600 shops within the UK. We were incentivising our teams to reduce their impact that they were having on the environment. So we need to do this in a really, really fun way with a red, amber, green system so that shop managers can understand exactly how they can reduce the impact they're having on the environment. So from reducing the amount of electricity that they're using, reducing their carbon footprint, but also then being advocates of the TUI Care Foundation, which is one of the ways that we can then pay back in the destinations that our customers are travelling to.
Susanna, let's come to you. The elephant in the room a bit is that many people who go on holiday fly, and carbon emissions are part of that.
Yeah.
Is the tourism industry grasping this as firmly as they might?
Yeah, I mean, it is very topical in the last 2 days. The reason why I couldn't be here was I went to an aviation carbon conference, and so that is where over 60 airlines were, 200 people really discussing for 2 days the absolute ins and outs of measuring carbon, reporting it, because as many of you probably know, from the 1st of January in 2019, this new system starts, CORSIA, carbon offsetting reduction scheme for international aviation, and so airlines will have to report their emissions, and that is not an easy task, and so they are aware. The idea is ultimately to then offset growth beyond 2020. Now offsetting, there's a whole lot of issues, but since you talk about the customer, one thing that came up at the discussions with the airlines, many still see it as a compliance thing. We have to do this, we have to measure the carbon, we have to report, and we have to provide that offset. It's not embedded really yet, the thinking, okay, this is actually truly important that we're part of it. And customers, of course, and that was one point I was making, there are customers who come to a hotel that does a lot of initiative in terms of responsible tourism. They fly there, they feel some disconnect.
Yeah.
So they expect the airline to do their bit and mean it and also communicate it. And I think that's the next big thing for the airlines, not just to do the compliance, but actually go beyond and engage their customers.
Okay, I sense this is a topic we should come back to. Inga, if I can come to you and ask about these specific initiatives. You've got some quite interesting ones in terms of power generation.
Yeah, that is correct. So I think in terms of responsibility as a company, at Radisson Hotel Group, we have 1,400 hotels around the world.
Yeah.
So the important thing is to reduce that footprint on the carbon side, on the water side, on the waste side. And for instance, on carbon and on water, we have been able to reduce our footprint by over 20% on carbon and by over 30% on water. And the way to do that is to invest and to try out innovations, because the innovations are out there, especially you are referring to the renewable power generation. Yes. And actually in South Africa, in Cape Town, we are trying one of those innovations on hybrid solar panels. So those are solar panels that generate electricity and heat at the same time, and they are 30% more efficient than the traditional solar powers. So our hotel park in Foreshore in Cape Town is leading the way with that. And what people do not realize is that such an investment on renewable energy does not only reduce the footprint, the carbon footprint of the hotel significantly, and I see the minister nodding, I'm going to the water footprint as well, because to generate electricity and power in Cape Town, water is needed. For every kilowatt hour, 1.4 liter of water is needed. So by installing renewable energy in our hotel, we are also helping to preserve water so it can be used for other uses.
We talk about responsible travel a lot of the time in terms of water, electricity, and of course plastics, but it's getting people's perception of how they impact the environment around them, and I mean it in its broadest terms, communities, for example, that is extending too. Is it difficult to stay on top of all of the various things that come up in the press and so on, and to respond to them?
Well, I think, TUI has for a long time led the way in having a real focus internally and having a team focused on sustainability. And Jane Ashton has been recognised both within the travel industry or more globally for the work that she's led there. So it's really important that we have that focus internally and that we seek to address every single area of the customer journey. So yes, there's a lot to keep up on and there's always more to do, but with the right focus, I believe that we can deliver there.
What are the next targets? I mean, we've talked about, we will talk about in the context of the awards, wildlife tourism, sometimes this where people visit orphanages, but you know, it's unclear as to whether there's an incentive to provide children for orphanages and so on. It's a very complex world we live in, isn't it?
It is a very complex world that we live in, and we work closely with all agencies and the authorities to make sure that the experiences that we are offering to our customers, and they are increasingly wanting more authentic experiences, meet the needs of the communities that we operate in. And one of the ways that we are doing that is through the TUI Care Foundation. So we're working in destination with the local authorities, with NGOs, to make sure that where we're taking our customers, that we are looking after the local people, and that we're also investing in the local community as well. So we do that through the TUI Care Foundation, and there's lots of great initiatives that we can talk about. So in Crete recently, we've had an initiative where we're working with local farmers and producers of wine. It's wine that we're using now in our hotels, and the same we are working to produce olive oil. So it's a great way that actually we can invest in the destinations that we are taking customers to, but we can also provide sustainable employment. So I think that's really where we can make a difference.
Inga, I saw you nodding there as Helen was talking about people wanting the authentic experience. Is there a conflict there, do you think?
I don't really see a conflict. I think we all, as tourism and travel operators and large hotel companies like ourselves, we have an opportunity to engage with the guests. If you're welcoming over 200,000 guests every day worldwide like we do, you have that opportunity of a touch point to involve them. And we do that with a number of classics. Like, for instance, we have linked our towel reuse to investing in safe drinking water projects. So every time a guest in our hotel reuses their towel, we actually donate to Just a Drop, the charity that is also associated with WTM. And that is making a lot of impact, but it's also helping to tell the story to the guest and engage them. Another thing we're doing at this time, and which is very successful, is we've started a cause marketing campaign in our Asia-Pac hotels called Make a Difference, where for every room night that gets booked in our Asia-Pac hotels, we donate $1 to our global charity partner SOS Children's Villages. Now that is a significant flow of donations, but it also helps to make travelers aware of the causes of protecting children and youth, and also providing employment to the youth so that they get a better future.
I think this is a very interesting point that's being made here, that communicating and linking the story, you had a very good expression there, and I can't quite remember what it was, but telling the story to the guests and linking it to another outcome, the towels and the Just a Drop. I know that you specialize in communications too, so tell us the importance of that, if you would.
I think it comes down to values and shared values, and for the customer to understand that maybe the business has values more than just generating profit, whether it's community, environment, that creates better products and better experiences. And if there's ways to share that with the customer and give the customer the opportunity to be part of it, that results in a better business. And there's actually quite a lot of research that these types of businesses have ultimately better profitability, lower staff turnover, higher customer satisfaction, because they are superior. And what often I think we need to do still better is think about the customer as a willing helping hand rather than someone we need to save from the back of the house initiative that we're doing, because the customer wants it. They want to be part of it.
But I'm very interested in this very close link between doing something and communicating it to the customer. Because if you're communicating something too complicated, presumably they either don't buy into it or they can't understand it. It's a complicated business.
It is a complicated business, but people are not stupid. And so there's one example I work with in Australia where the business uses a smart service system. So it's a combination of smart digital metering, informing the people about how much they used, encouraging them to use less in very clever ways, but also telling them, for example, any savings we make will go to a local charity for wildlife conservation. So all of a sudden you close the loop and the people really keen to contribute.
Interesting.
I think communication is really important, and I think one of the challenges for us as a business is to make sure that we communicate to our own people as well, the benefits of what that we're doing. We have, like all organisations, there is a big team within TUI, and we have to invest significantly in communicating to our own people as well, the benefit that we are.
How do you do that? How do you go about? I hadn't even thought that might be a problem. Of course, it is. Yes.
It is. Well, there's a lot of training that takes place for our internal colleagues across all of the front line, so that they understand the impacts of our business on the environment and how they can then make a difference. So whether this is online training or whether it is in destination training, it's really important that we get the message down to our frontline staff, because they then can do a great job in communicating to our customers the initiatives that we have underway, and also how our consumers can make a difference as well.
You're both involved with very, very strong, well-known brands. Do you see yourself, I started by saying that the tourist industry can be a very useful mouthpiece, I think. Do you see yourselves in that role, Inga?
Well, I wouldn't overestimate our own importance, but I do think that we have a responsibility as a company, but also collectively. And to highlight, we are a very active member of a group of international hotel companies coming together and working on sustainability called the International Tourism Partnership. And collectively, we have set 2030 long-term goals for the industry on youth employment, human rights, carbon reduction, and water stewardship. And we all collectively and individually work on that. And we also create tools on this platform of the ITP that we offer to the wider industry. So I think the larger companies who have bigger teams and who have resources to reach out not only to their own employees but to their network of hotels also have a responsibility to partner, as it says in the SDG 17, partnerships for the goals, to reach out to the other players in the industry and the destinations and do these projects collectively.
Do you find that you have to train your staff to understand the value of what you're doing too? Do you have to
Absolutely,
communicate?
and it's fun doing that, actually.
Is it?
Because we have 2 trainings in the sustainability world. We have one that we call Living Responsible Business, and then one that's called Leading for the leaders of the hotels and the area offices. And we make that a very engaging training with lots of exercises, with a board game at the end and lots of videos. And we do feel that this is very useful because a lot of our staff are young people. They want to be, just like the young consumers, as Helen was saying, they want to be engaged, they want to be involved. And sometimes the best ideas just come from the field. Like on banning the straws, Refuse the Straw was an initiative that started in our company, not globally, but for us it started with hotels in Africa, team members saying, we're going to do this, we're not going to serve straws. And from there, it spread from a couple of hotels in Africa, it spread to the whole of EMEA, now our hotels in China, and across the company. So it comes from initiatives in the hotels. Sometimes.
Yeah, so it's interesting that nobody has a monopoly on good ideas, do they? Often they will come from staff.
Well, they come from staff, they come from civil society, from the kids even at school. I mean, we all have children, and we know our children have the best ideas. They have common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I was going to say is that, and this is why events like this are so important in having big companies on the panel, having finalists and award winners, is that we need these ideas to multiply. Because, and the reason I say that is because tourism is such a successful industry. It's growing faster than average.
Yeah.
And we need to multiply these good ideas and the companies that actually show that it can be done to make sure that everyone is doing it. Otherwise, we do not achieve what we need to achieve.
Is there enough sharing of good ideas, do you think?
Oh, I think there's a lot
within the industry.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Good communication. Excellent. Now, I'd like to take a couple of questions from the audience. We're overrunning, so we don't have too much time. Please don't give a speech. Do tell me where you're from and what your name is. Yes, please. I can see a hand here. So we get a mic there. And there's another hand, I think, somewhere else. We get a mic to 2 hands, and then we can start. There's one at the back. Excellent. So let's go right in the middle here. Yes, please, if you'd stand up. Yes, hello.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Angela Kalish. I'm the chair for an organization called Equality in Tourism, which works with women to improve the position of women in the tourism and hospitality industry.
And you would no doubt have noticed that we're all women here.
You are, and that's fantastic. However, gender equality really hasn't been mentioned as yet.
No.
Nor have we mentioned the position of people in host communities, local communities in destinations, who are often struggling against some of the negative impacts of tourism.
Okay.
However, I don't want to be negative. I want.
What is your question?
My question is: we're just publishing a report on women in senior and executive positions in the tourism industry, and on company boards. And I know that Inge, for example, has contributed to our research with an interview on that. Inge has done some incredible work on this, and I want to know that since the takeover by a Chinese company, which is happening a lot, what's actually happening, how much progress has been made in your strategy for gender equality?
So it's a question to Inge in particular, but if you'd like anybody else, Inge.
Can I answer? Yeah. Okay.
Please do.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and thank you for promoting the work of women and gender equality in tourism and travel. We need that, absolutely. I think we are doing, since the takeover that you refer to, our program of balanced leadership, as we call it, continues with program in the hotels, with specific targets, and with unique achievements, like we having the first female native Saudi GM in a hotel in Saudi Arabia. So the program continues. However, I must admit that at the board level, we did lose female representation. We continue, of course, to advocate for that. And as we are going to another ownership transition, I hope we can continue to put that on the agenda, because I do think it needs to come from the top. But I can assure you that in our business leadership, so let's say the top 100 of the company, I don't know the exact percentage, but the equality is strongly increased over the last year and a half.
Did you want to say
Yeah,
something?
can I just touch on what's happening with to support females in destination, because that's really important to the work that we do at the TUI Care Foundation, and there's a number of programs that we are investing in that absolutely supports the development of women. So whether that's training them to work in our
This is in the
hotels,
communities in which you operate, just to be clear. So that's the other part of your question.
So it is really important for us that we continue to do that, so that we give them the skills so that they then can have a career. We're doing some great work with training in hospitality, and also upskilling and giving people the opportunity to work in our hotels. So investing in women in destination is core to what the TUI Care Foundation is doing.
Right. Another question, please. Whoever's got the microphone, stand up and tell us your name and where you're from, please.
Thank you. My name is Luke Douglas-Hume. I come from a campaign called Stir Crazy. And I'm sorry about this thing. The second question really for you is great work you've been doing about straws. We use these stirrers for 4 seconds, and they last for centuries. Will you also please lead the way on just making a public policy about not providing these for customers with your Radisson brand?
Good points. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand. You probably understand better than I do.
You were talking about the stirrers in the coffee?
Yeah, plastic stirrers.
I just want to say that for me, straws, we were talking about this. Straws, this is a paper one, by the way. It's a symbolic segue into having the conversation on single-use plastics, because from there we take it to stirrers having no stirrers at all or others, and we take it in Radisson to making our meeting and events single-use plastic-free. So it's a symbolic one that has helped engage the conversation on other topics. So I think it's very good you bring that up. It's not just the straws.
Exactly, to engage with the question of just why plastic? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
These are the bigger questions.
Or why use them in the first place?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's what we see with the straws. It has given us a business case because we don't offer the straws in the first place. We serve the drinks without the straws. That has reduced straw use by 84%. And the alternatives, although they are more expensive, the business case is still there because the straw use in general just is reduced.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next question, please. There's a question at the back. If we could get a microphone there, please. And if anybody else put their hand up, we can get the microphone to them. There's one here, please. Could you get a microphone to that person there, please? Thank you. Right, yes, please.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Sean, and I work with Shiva Foundation, and we work with hotels in the UK, mostly on modern slavery and human trafficking.
Yes.
And it's been briefly addressed today, and talking about human rights, and I'm familiar with ITP's principles on forced labor, and I'm looking forward to hearing them later today. But I just wondered if the people on the panel could potentially share a bit of information about what kind of initiatives they're taking to address the risk of exploitation of any kind, whether that's in the hotels, so child sexual exploitation, but also with staff, and then further down the supply chain. And then second, how do we loop the customers into that conversation? Because historically that's been a bit tricky.
Yes, okay. Exploitation. Where might you come across it and how might you deal with it?
Do you want to go first?
Either of you?
When we've worked really closely with the TUI Care Foundation to promote these topics, and what we're trying to do in resort is make sure that we've got a really clear communication to our customers. We also work really closely with all of our suppliers and local agencies to make sure that we are compliant, that we are looking after all of our people and our employees that work in resort, and that we make sure that they have a sustainable future. So,
But is it very proactive what you do? Are you constantly looking out for it, or is it more reactive when it's brought to your
no,
notice?
absolutely, it's part of the way that we do business, and we
Yes.
want to make sure that all of our employees are well looked after, that we are compliant, they have a fair and safe working environment. It's part of the way we do business.
Yes, please.
Just quickly, I mean, it's something that's obviously also of real concern to the airlines, and I know that
Yes.
Finnair, for example, actively trains staff to recognize situations and deal with potential situations of human trafficking, so they want to be part of a positive solution.
Okay, yeah. I mean, hearing about sort of 15-year-olds checking in or things like that who need to be interrupted and questioned. And airlines seem more switched on to this,
Yeah,
I get the
absolutely,
impression,
absolutely.
yes. Yes, please. The question here, there's the mic, wherever the microphone is, could you get up and start? And there's a question here as well, please. Great number of questions we've got. A couple more, I think. Don't we think? Yep. Yes, please. Could you stand up and shout? We don't have to shout.
Yes.
Hi.
My name's Alison Stancliffe, and 30 years ago I started a network called Tourism Concern. And its aim at the time was to say tourism is a huge industry 30 years ago, and no one is talking about the hosts. No one was actually thinking that there are impacts. So I'm
Hosts
very
meaning
proud.
what? Local communities are you talking
Exactly.
about? Yes.
Human, all the kind of impacts that have been sung loud and clear over the last day or two here. So I'm amazed in some ways that the industry now has taken on board so much of what we were saying. I despair that it's taken 30 years to get even this far, and that here we have an audience, a wonderful audience, but look what's happening outside here, how much bigger the challenge is. I'd just like a comment on that. How do you feel yourself at where the movement to put the people who matter, the people in the destinations that we take our clients to, that they matter? Is it, do you think, actually has it come home now?
Right, I think Helen's touched on that, haven't you, really? Ingo, do you have any more thoughts that you'd like to?
I don't think it's, I'm awfully sorry, but it was yes, let's do a little bit. I think
Yes.
I'm thinking about the wider the wider tourism industry. That's what I want to get your feeling about.
Okay, who has some thoughts that they want to share on that?
Well, I think it's an excellent point, but the thing is, when you are a tourism business, the important thing is to do the right thing yourself and to collaborate with others who do also the right thing in the industry. And I think platforms like the ITP, which I referred to earlier, when we talk about human rights, we talk about human rights and targets in the whole value chain. So we talk about providing chances through employment, specifically youth employment, equal employment locally. We talk about what do we do in our value chain, how do we reach out to suppliers, how do we reach out to the partners and suppliers in hotel building and development. So I think a lot of the tourism and travel is going, and specifically the international companies, when we come in to certain destinations where there are no international partners before, international companies before, we often create that employment, we create that uplift of skills. Of course, we need to pay attention to that and we need to do that responsibly. But in terms of employment creation and chance creation, I think we are on the right track, let's say.
I think just from our perspective, at TUI, we're really clear as the market leader, it's our responsibility to lead the way. And by leading the way, that's the way we believe we can have the biggest difference, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Right. Yes, next question, please. Yes, please.
Hello, my name's Nicola, and I work for a holiday rental company called SpainHoliday.com in Spain. So I know we're supposed to be talking about positive things today, and I'm hoping for a positive answer to maybe what's a little bit of a negative question. We recently started a campaign which looks to reduce food waste by asking guests in accommodation to put together the food and the half-used toiletries that they have, and we get the homeowners to take them and donate them to local food banks. So we think this is a great idea, and obviously at the moment the leading campaigns are about plastic and things like that. But my question really is that I've found in trying to spread the message that there's a certain amount of sustainability fatigue, and well, that's been polite. Sometimes there's kind of animosity towards campaigns, and obviously you're all quite big fish up there compared to our company, which is small fry.
Are they witnessing fatigue, is the question, yes?
Yes, it's kind of like people want to focus on, instead of saying congratulations on the things that you are doing, they always want to say, well, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? So I just want some advice on how would you tackle this fatigue of people being negative to great ideas. Everything's a great idea.
Okay, great. Fatigue. Is there fatigue out there?
I actually don't see that. I think it's the opposite in some ways. It's the mainstreaming. And the reason I say that, for example, climate change, carbon risk, the mainstream companies now treat this as an absolutely essential business component. So you need to understand the risk. You need to, and food waste is another great one, because if you manage food better, there's so many win-wins, we almost don't even have to call it sustainable. Yeah. It's better, it brings in local communities, it's cheaper if you don't have to just cut the waste. So I think it's moving from, okay, sustainable here on the left to actually absolutely central good business. That's what I see.
Sorry. I just wanted to add, and I want to applaud the initiatives that you are taking, but it's good to all go at it collectively. But I think creative communication is also a way to go about it. It's not really pointing the finger, but maybe having a little carrot with an incentive, like what we do, for instance, in the Middle East. Food waste is a big deal, because when families eat and they come together, it's all about the abundance of food. And one of our director of the kitchens in one of our big hotels with 13 restaurants, he said he introduced a scheme where people get a discount of, I don't know what the discount is, let's say it's 10%, when the food they have on their plate is eaten. And you would see what an amazing impact this has had. It's like a little carrot that was tended to the guests and the customers. They can still enjoy the meal. It's in the way you communicate, and I have plenty of other examples. So I think we need to be smart about that as well.
About how you communicate. Yeah. Would you say that the way in which you communicate is probably changing too,
It is, and it needs to be fun, it needs to be engaging, it needs to be digital, and it needs to appeal to everyone, and a real clear, simple message. That's the key.
So there's an art in that too. There we must leave it, because we need to go on to the awards. I want to thank all our panellists very much indeed for talking us through some of those exciting initiatives and the very strong momentum within the industry. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.